Not every relationship that starts with chemistry ends with clarity. Sometimes what feels like connection is actually confusion disguised as passion. And the longer you ignore the red flags, manipulation, guilt tactics, emotional instability, the more you trade your peace for proximity. The truth is, if she acts a certain way consistently, it's not just how she is. It's a sign you might be in the wrong relationship. In this video, we're breaking down specific behaviors that Stoic men don't tolerate, not because they're cold, but because they've done the inner work to know what peace is worth. These aren't minor flaws. These are patterns that chip away at your clarity, your confidence, and eventually your identity. And the man who leads himself never sacrifices those for temporary attention or approval. Before we dive in, here's the question of the day. What's one behavior you'll never tolerate again in a relationship? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you're watching this because you're choosing strength over settling, include the word masculine in your reply. Let's begin. A healthy relationship respects your limits. An unhealthy one pressures them, subtly, persistently, and often under the mask of just joking, just asking, or just being emotional. If she's constantly testing your boundaries, pushing against your time, your values, your space, it's not by accident. It's how control begins, and if you keep bending, it never ends. Stoic men know that boundaries aren't requests, they're standards enforced quietly. When she dismisses your time commitments, mocks your goals, or crosses lines you've already drawn and you let it slide to avoid conflict, you send a message: my word is flexible. That flexibility might keep the peace short-term, but long-term it destroys respect. Here's a simple example. You tell her you have 2 hours to meet because of a morning routine or project. She shows up late, stays longer, and downplays the boundary. One time, maybe a mistake. But if it becomes a pattern, you're not just dealing with poor time management. You're dealing with someone who treats your priorities as optional. That's not miscommunication. That's disregard. A woman who respects you doesn't need you to defend your boundaries every week. She hears them once and she adapts or exits. When you constantly feel like you're restating your standards, you're not in a relationship. You're in training mode, and that dynamic burns you out over time. The Stoic response? You don't explain more. You enforce faster. And if enforcement starts feeling like a full-time job, it might be time to leave. Not with anger, but with clarity. There's a difference between emotional expression and emotional manipulation. In a grounded relationship, emotion is shared to connect, to build trust, to be seen. But in a toxic dynamic, emotion becomes a tool used to guilt, control, or distract you from what's really going on. If she frequently cries, sulks, goes silent, or escalates over minor issues, not to resolve them, but to shift power, you're not connecting. You're being steered. Stoic men recognize these tactics because they don't get swept into the drama. They observe, pause, and ask, is this emotion an honest expression or a strategy to bypass accountability? If she gets emotional only when she's losing the argument, being questioned, or confronted with truth, it's not vulnerability, it's defense. And if you find yourself backing down just to soothe her, you're not building intimacy, you're being conditioned. Example, you calmly say something isn't working for you. She suddenly breaks into tears, accuses you of being distant or cold, and makes the conversation about your tone. Now you're defending how you said it instead of what needed to be said. That emotional pivot isn't connection, it's evasion. And over time, it trains you to avoid honesty, to stay quiet, to self-edit. That's not love, it's erosion. The Stoic solution isn't to become emotionless, it's to remain emotionally sovereign. You hold space for real feelings, but you don't submit to manipulation. If she can only engage with you by controlling the emotional weather, you're not in a relationship. You're in a power struggle masked as passion. And the longer you stay in it, the more you lose your center. The man who knows his worth won't sacrifice clarity for chaos. He steps back, regroups, and walks if he must. Peace over performance, every time. In a healthy relationship, communication creates understanding. You speak, she listens. She speaks, you listen. But in a dysfunctional one, communication turns into interrogation, and you're always on the defense. If you find yourself constantly explaining your words, your tone, your actions, your intentions, and somehow, it's still never enough. You're not being heard. You're being managed. This pattern is subtle at first. She questions why you didn't answer fast enough, why you needed alone time, why you chose to spend time with friends. You explain. But then it happens again and again. Over time, you begin to pre-explain things before they even happen, trying to prevent a reaction. That's not clarity. That's self-censorship, and it's a red flag disguised as communication. Stoic men draw the line early. They don't offer endless disclaimers. They say what they mean and let their actions speak. If someone tries to twist that, guilt them, or pull them into circular conversations, they step back. Because constantly explaining yourself is a trap, one designed to keep you off balance, always proving, never resting. Here's the truth. In a respectful dynamic, your no doesn't need a backstory. Your boundaries don't require a PowerPoint. If you're with someone who demands endless explanation but never returns the same level of openness, you're not in a relationship. You're in a quiet performance loop, and Stoic men don't perform. They express once, maybe twice. After that, they don't explain, they exit. In the right relationship, peace is something you feel together. In the silence, in the comfort of shared space, in the ease of simply being. But if the only time you feel calm is when she's not around, that's not peace, it's relief. And relief shouldn't be your most consistent emotional state in a relationship. Stoic men are highly tuned to their internal environment. If your body relaxes when she leaves the room, if your mind becomes clearer when she stops texting, if your energy returns only when you're alone, those aren't coincidences. That's your nervous system signaling you're operating under pressure. And when you mistake that pressure for passion or intensity, you stay locked in something that's slowly draining you. Consider this. You spend an evening with her, and afterward you feel mentally foggy, emotionally tight, even a little numb. No fight happened, no dramatic blow-up, but your system is tense. That's not a fluke. That's chronic emotional friction. And over time, it reshapes your baseline. Your motivation drops, your goals blur, your clarity fades. Why? Because you've started to link presence with exhaustion. A man on a Stoic path doesn't ignore those signals. He doesn't gaslight himself into thinking, maybe I'm just not being patient enough. No, he trusts the data. If your peace lives outside the relationship instead of within it, you're not being too sensitive. You're being trained to associate love with tension. And the moment you realize that, the choice becomes clear. Return to yourself, or stay slowly pulled apart by something that wears the mask of connection, but never delivers the substance. The right woman doesn't exhaust you. She reinforces you. She doesn't scatter your focus. She sharpens it. If every time you spend time with her, you walk away mentally tired, emotionally confused, or energetically flat, that's not chemistry. It's depletion. And for a man on a Stoic path, that kind of drain isn't something to ignore. It's something to confront. Energy is data. Your body speaks when your mind tries to rationalize. You might tell yourself, she's just emotional, or it's just a rough patch. But your clarity, creativity, and drive are all dropping. You're skipping workouts, pushing off projects. You feel like you're in a fog, and somehow it always circles back to the same person. That's not coincidence. That's cost. A strong relationship should challenge you, yes, but it should also restore you. There should be moments of rest, of clarity, of emotional alignment. If all you're doing is solving problems, managing tension, or trying to get back to how things worked, you're no longer in a relationship. You're in emotional maintenance mode, and maintenance without movement becomes erosion. The Stoic man measures a connection not just by how it feels in the moment, but by how it leaves him after. Are you clearer, more focused, more grounded? Or are you constantly recovering from the time you spent together? If it's the latter, the relationship isn't helping you grow. It's quietly pulling you off your path. And the longer you ignore that feeling, the harder it becomes to hear your own direction again. A relationship should never cost you your clarity, your peace, or your direction. If you find yourself constantly justifying, managing, or recovering from someone's presence, that's not love. It's self-abandonment. Stoic men don't stay where they're slowly being drained. They recognize the signs, trust their internal signals, and walk, not in anger, but in alignment. The truth is simple. If you're always explaining, always adjusting, and rarely feeling grounded, you're not building something. You're surviving it. And survival isn't the standard. You deserve a connection that supports your discipline, sharpens your focus, and brings you closer to yourself, not further away. If this message hit home, drop the word masculine in the comments. That's how I know you're not here to settle. You're here to strengthen. And if that's the case, stay locked in. Masculine Stoic Mind is for men who choose peace over performance, clarity over chaos, and self-respect over any relationship that asks them to shrink.